In this part of the lesson, you're going to explore how to use fraction division or how to do fraction division using common denominators. So in the first part of the student page, you are simply investigating when you divide 6 red rods by 2 red rods, 6 white rods by 2 white rods by 2 white rods. So in other words, you're keeping the same colors. And in the end, you find out that draw the conclusion that it doesn't really matter what color we had to use in order for us to get the answer of 6 divided by 2. Next, let's examine fraction division using this table and also the Cuisinart rods. So the first thing is to complete the following table by redoing the problems from the previous activity. So from the previous lesson, you may have struggled a little bit in regards to trying to figure out how those Cuisinart rods would kind of divide into each other, or what that representation was. And so here's another idea. When we get to our simplified answer, you can also check your answers from before. And so what we want to do is we want to get the fractions to be the same type. And so the first row or column right here is to rewrite the problems using the same type. So if we want to look at, so we want to do this here. And so we want to look at 1 divided by 1/2, but we want to do that in terms of the Cuisinart rod. So if we go here, here's 1. And the first thing we want to do is put them into the same type. So we know that a blue is 1/2, and so I want to get them into some sort of common, and we talked about this idea of common denominators. And if you recall from the previous page, we were talking about that doesn't matter which color we're using when we do our division. So we know that 1 whole is equivalent to these 2 blue rods. So now we want to do the division of this just like we did before. And if we want to divide by 1/2, we're going to take, and it's going to take, and I'm going to put it just above here, 1 and 2 groups or 2 copies of that. But we now know that 1 can be written as 2 over 2 divided by, so when we write in here now, the equivalent is 2 over 2 divided by 1/2. And that equivalent fraction, now that we have equivalent colors, we can take and just do 2 divided by 1, and which is the same thing now as in fraction form as 2 over 1, and that's simplified as just 2. Okay, let's look at 1/9 divided by 1/3. That tends to be a little bit more of the tricky one. And we know that 1/9 is red, and we have 1/3, which is our dark green. So if we go back to our Cuisinart rods, and we want to do 1/9, which is our red one, and that would be divided by, oops, not the light green, but the dark green. And that's how we displayed it last time. But now we want to get this as a common denominator. And so we want them to be in the same colors. So we still have our red one, but now our dark green one we want in terms of red. And so we need 3 of those to represent this green. Right, so they're the same size. And so now we can see that this is 1 out of the 3 as our relationship. And so now if we go back and look over here, and if I were to take the 1/9, oops, there we go, divided by, and the dark green of 1/3, but 1/3 is now, instead of the 1/3 being as green, we're going to make 1/3 as three ninths. And so now we have 1/9 divided by 3/9, and so now we have the equivalent of 1 divided by 3. So because we have these common colors, common denominators, we now have 1 divided by 3. That fraction looks like 1 divided by 3, or 1/3. As you can see, again, we changed the 1/3 into 3/9, and then now that we have equivalent, or common denominators or equivalent colors, we can take and write the equivalent problem 1 divided by 3. You're going to come up with just an explanation of what you're doing each time, and then you can have some sort of rule that you have developed for dividing fractions. And then there's some additional practice problems here. So notice that we have different denominators, and so our key is to change them into the same type again. So here's our first key. It's making sure that these are the same type so that we can write an equivalent problem. So you're going to have some common denominators for each one of these so that you can end up with a simplified answer.